Welcome to Bone of My Bone, Marriage of the Heart.
We are your hosts. I am Katina Robinson.
And I'm Ronnie Robinson.
And we'll tell you a little bit about Bone of My Bone, Marriage of the Heart. And then we got our surprise guest. We're going to introduce her. We know you see her, but you don't know who she is yet. Do you? Do you? Do you? You may do. But let us tell you a little bit about Bone of My Bone, Marriage of the Heart, and where it comes from.
Okay. Genesis 2:23 and 24. And 23 says, And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Verse 24, Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother and shall cleave unto his wife. Ooh.
Yes, come on, come
Yes.
on.
And they shall be one flesh. I love
Yes.
being one flesh with you.
I love being one
I'm
flesh
sorry,
with
we
you.
got guests. We need to chill.
No, we got to be
I don't
ourselves.
care.
The second half of Bone of My Bone, Marriage of the Heart comes from Matthew 6 and 21, which says, For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
Oh, I got to talk about my treasure box. Y'all know I do it every week, and I'm going to continue to do it because I'm married to this beautiful lady right here. And I want you to know that she is part of my treasure box. When I get down in that valley, I open up my treasure box, and here come the sunlight, and it would be her. And I'm so happy that God sent me a piece of heaven.
Oh,
It
wow,
is a
that's so
piece of heaven, a
awesome.
piece of
Thank
heaven.
you,
And I'm
baby.
so happy to share the rest of my life with you, beautiful.
Yes, me too. I
I
love
would
you.
kiss, but we got guests.
Oh, we don't.
So
Really?
look here. So the purpose of Bone of My Bone, Marriage of the Heart is to encourage couples to remember love is worth fighting for. Yes,
indeed.
it
Yes,
is.
indeed.
It is.
Yes.
So you guys see that we have a special guest on tonight. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about our
Ooh, I'm gonna
special
start
guest.
clapping right now. I'm gonna just tell you, I'm
Yes.
just start.
Our special guest is Dr. Ann Jones, known affectionately by thousands as Mimi. She's our Mimi, y'all. We love
Yes.
her. She has spent her life in ministry serving others. She was married and in ministry for 52 years to Dr. Henry R. Jones, the love
Yes.
of her life. Y'all hear
Mm-hmm.
that? The love of her life. I
Yes.
know it's awesome to be married to the love of your life.
Yes.
The power couple were evangelists as they began their marriage together and moved into establishing and pastoring churches. Throughout their ministry, life together, they not only established and pastored churches, but they also established a network of churches with spiritual sons and daughters.
Awesome.
Dr. Henry and Dr. Ann also traveled throughout the world in prophetic ministry for 18 years before Dr. Henry
Wow.
was diagnosed with dementia. Dr. Ann realized that her season of ministry was changing as they transitioned their last church to their daughter, Pastor Kimberly Jones, also known as Real Talk
Real
Kim.
talk.
For the past 5 years, Dr. Ann was the principal caregiver for her husband as he transitioned through the 7 stages of dementia.
Mm.
Her one desire was to minister to him in their home and to provide a secure environment until his transition to his eternal home. Dr. Henry passed away on June the 16th, 2020, with their son, daughter in law, daughter, and 5 grandsons ministering to him as he transitioned. Dr. Ann can now be heard on Live at 6 with her daughter and is the apostle for the IAM Harvest Network, Incorporated, also Limitless Church in Fayetteville, Georgia. She is an author, writer, blogger, and lives to fulfill the call of God on her life.
Amen.
Can we clap it up for Dr. Ann
Yes, give yourself a
Jones?
hand. You deserve it. You
Yes.
deserve it.
Yes, we are
Amen.
so honored to have you
Yes.
here with us today. And we're going to talk about Mourn to Move.
Yes.
Yep.
Um,
Mourn and move.
Mourn
yes,
and
my
Move.
move, yes.
Yes, Mourn and Move.
Yeah, we were married 52 years.
Wow.
That's a long time.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes.
I can tell you this: the first 26 years of my marriage, we were always busy, always in ministry, always successful. So it wasn't that, but we just really did not. Um, we were so busy in ministry. By the time we hit 26 years, it was um, it was like we almost got disconnected.
Wow.
And I'm talking about, this is the truth. 52 years I
Mhm.
lived with this same man,
Wow.
and we worked together, we played together, we slept together. We never ever did not sleep together. There was
That's
never.
awesome.
It did not matter how many times we went to bed. If we were upset, our deal was we would always sleep together.
That's
And we
awesome.
did. We never left our bed
That's
Amen.
awesome.
until he got sick in the last few months, where he couldn't get up on the bed.
Mm.
But the first 26 years were, we were young. We made so many changes. We had, we became very legal. The My husband had, he was always into the Word, always studying, always researching. So at 22, I am 22 years old, guys, and I look nice.
You do.
I
You're
did,
beautiful
Yeah,
no,
now.
yeah,
can you? And I was 22,
Mm-hmm.
and at 22, he says to me one day, he came in, he said, Ann, he said, I don't want you to wear any more makeup. I don't want you to ever cut your hair again.
Wow.
You can't color your eyebrow.
Oh wow.
You can't color your hair. He started giving me a list of things that I could not do, and it just was a progressive list. It didn't
Oh,
just happen in one day.
wow.
It just was progressive.
Wow.
And I learned to live that way.
Wow.
In fact, we lived down the street from some Amish
Oh wow.
in West Point, Mississippi, when we started pastoring there. And they were not any more holy than I was.
Wow.
Because I had long hair just like they did. I have long
Yeah.
dresses just like they did.
Right.
I had no makeup on just like them, no
Wow.
jewelry.
Mm.
We had no TV. My kids were not raised with a TV.
Oh wow.
So what? Can I ask you what branch of or I say religion?
We were
that-
apostolic.
National.
Okay, got you, got
We
you.
were the branch was United. It was United Pentecostal Church.
Mm-hmm.
But we were really at first, before we got in the United Pentecostal Church, we were apostolic. We felt like that the United was too liberal,
Mm-hmm. Too liberal.
too liberal.
Yes.
But so I lived that way 18 years,
Wow.
and I didn't. And you know what? I didn't begrudge it. I just and we pastored Pentecostal churches, and our people all look like that. My husband kept an iron hand on our people. So, in fact, when we came to Georgia and we started a new church, we were probably one of the strictest churches in the city.
Wow.
Well, probably in the state. So, when we started making changes, and we started making changes when he started hearing from God.
Wow.
And that's one thing he did. He had no problem. He was very progressive. So, 18 years, we look like this. No TV, no nothing. And my kids, the deal with this, though, was my son read more books in the 6th grade than the whole grade class
Oh
read.
wow.
He was such an avid reader. But when we eventually got him, we called it a monitor,
Mm.
Which was a TV really.
Right. Uh-huh.
But I didn't know it. My husband brought it in. He said, this is a monitor.
Okay.
And the deal was, I said, well, that's fine. So we're not going to there's no TV shows we're watching. We'll just see a movie, and we can determine which movie. It was hard on me making changes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so he said, oh, yeah. And then, though, when they came to install that TV that day, my husband was not at home. And so the guy came in. He said, where's the cable? Where are you going to have the cable? I said, oh, we don't have cable.
Oh.
And then he said, oh, so you're not going to have cable, so you need a rabbit ear. He said, okay, I'll get it. You can get an external channel, or what's it called?
External fixture.
Talking
Yeah.
about the
Antenna.
Oh,
antenna.
and the
Yeah,
outside
yeah.
So,
The one you
yeah.
twist into. You
Yeah.
give me the old school.
So he said, we'll get you that. He said, I've got that for you. And I said, oh, no, sir, we don't want that either.
Oh,
I said, we're
wow.
only going to watch movies on this thing. We're not. And my husband called it while he was there installing, and he said, let me talk to him. He gets him on the phone. He said, leave the antenna. So when he came in, he turned that thing on, because I wouldn't even turn it on. I was thinking, oh my God, it's like a one-eyed monster.
Oh, and that's what they used to call it, the one-eyed
That's
devil.
what he had called it. He had called it that.
Yeah.
And then 18 years later, he is changing, but our kids are older. They're like 12 and 14. And they had, my daughter had worn sleeves down to here.
Oh.
And like sundresses when she was a baby, I would sew sleeves into her sundresses.
Oh.
She had never worn a pair of slacks.
Oh, poor Pastor Kim.
no.
Sorry.
Her hair was long. She'd never had her hair cut until she was probably 12 or 13.
Wow.
And she wanted it. So when it was time for us, we were making some changes, and she said, "I want to go to the hair salon. I want to go to a beauty shop."
Yeah.
And I said, "What do you want?" She said, "I want my hair done." And I said, "Okay." So we went, and she said, I said, "Just do it like this." And she's like, "No, Mother, let me do it." So she
That sounds
said,
like Pastor.
"Permit." So, oh my God, when that girl walked out, you should see pictures. Her hair was like, it looked like she had stuck her finger in a light socket.
Electrocuted.
Because she's got a lot of hair.
Yeah.
And it was like out
Oh my
here
goodness.
and short, and her hair had been long. It's like up to, and I was like, oh my God, what has she? And I was there with her, but I'm like, oh Jesus,
Oh my
because
goodness.
it was
She
after
wanted that Donna Summers look.
after we started making changes, though. When our church started making changes, and the deal was with the changes, the ladies could wear a wedding band.
Okay.
And then eventually they started trimming their hair.
So prior to that, they couldn't even wear their wedding
No.
bands? Wow. What's
Mm.
tonight's topic? It's Mourn and Move.
Yeah.
Tonight's topic is Mourn and Move. Star, thank you for showing up
I'm
tonight.
glad you're on
Hanging
here.
in.
Hey, Chrissy, good to see you too,
Yes.
guys.
Hey, everyone that's on. I'm
And
sorry we got
Star.
so engaged in
Yeah,
conversation
she
we
just
didn't
getting
say
started,
anything.
y'all. She just getting started.
So
And I don't
hello,
even know how I
everybody.
got on but this is our beginning, so that's what's
Yes.
important because my husband was a super strong leader.
Wow.
And whether that was at church or leading our network or whatever he was doing, but even in our family, he just sort of
Wow.
made the decisions and we all just went along with it.
Wow.
And so when he did this, though, when he came to me the second time, the first time he came to me at 22, and I just immediately gave up everything and became what he wanted.
Wow.
But the next time we were in our 40s. And so by then he said, Ann, he said, because he went to a hotel and got a room for 3 days and he got all of his concordances, the Bibles, different versions, and just
Uh-oh.
studied. When he comes out, he says, he comes back home and he says, Ann, he said, I've been doing a lot of studying. And he said, I just don't see how our outward appearance, how we can be good enough, we can dress holy enough, we can look holy enough to be saved.
Wow.
He said,
So
because it was Jesus Christ. He went to the
that's
cross for
awesome.
us.
Exactly.
He said he went to the cross for us, but he didn't just go to the cross for us. He took our sins with him so that we could be made righteous. We're not righteous in our own, he said.
Exactly.
And so when that happened, I looked at him and I said, listen, I'm older. And I said, I'm more mature now. And I can sort of, by then I was stubborn as I could be too.
Oh no,
And
not
I said,
you, Pastor Ann.
listen, I changed last time because you said for me to change. I said, but this time I will not. I said, I'm not going to make any changes until I know that God tells me.
Yeah.
And so the problem with that was everybody started changing because and the reason we started changing also was because the board, we were in an organization,
Mm-hmm.
and that board would hear somebody would make a call and say, "Oh my goodness, Brother Jones's kids, his youth are on a bus and they're headed to the Braves game." That was a sin.
Oh wow.
So they
Mm.
turned us in for everything. Then they would call. They
Everything.
would call him, Brother Jones, you're gonna have to come in and meet the board.
Oh wow.
He did that several times, and he told him the last time. He said, "I'm not coming back." He said, "This is ridiculous." That was a line. My kids didn't go to the Braves ball game, but if they wanted to go now, they could go.
Exactly.
But so he said, "Ann, we've got to determine who we are, not a board telling us what to do."
I know you were excited about that, huh?
Well, I was, but I was so secure in where I was with my hair piled up. Like, see, I had to have long hair, so my
Okay.
hair was down past my hips.
Wow.
But then we couldn't wear it down because I was married.
Oh.
So it's
Okay.
really crazy. So I was married. So this is the truth. When I was 25, 30, 35, up to 40, I looked older than I do at 70.
Oh wow.
And that's the truth. My husband looked like he stepped out of GQ and he looked like he uglied up his wife.
Oh no.
Wow.
That's what we used to
Wow.
say. Kim said that all the she would say, or PK said that she said, "Good Lord," and we realized, something had to change. but the change because we were living by man's rules and not what the
Wow.
Bible said.
Yes.
Listen up, everybody.
Yes.
Mourn and move.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she's talking about the beginning
Yeah.
to the end of these things. So you listen up.
And so I would get up at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, go downstairs, get on the couch, and just cry and say, God, I don't want to be lost. And I was afraid I'd be lost. I was so secure in looking the holy part.
Looking to grow.
Yeah, the look in the row. That I didn't know how to have a personal relationship outside of the dress.
Wow.
Outside of what I looked like.
That's deep.
And so I would sit on the organ every Sunday morning. I'd be playing the organ. And I'd watch families come in and conversations. And I'm saying, I wonder who's going to be changed today. Who's going to have their hair cut today?
Wow.
So you saw the change just taking place,
Oh,
and you were starting to notice
there was some of our ladies, their hair, they went from down below their hips to hair like mine in a week.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh my God,
the drastic cut.
This can't be happening. It took me a few years to get mine this short. But when that started happening, the Lord spoke to me sitting on the organ one morning, and He said, until you make changes yourself, you're so full of judgmentalism that there's no way you're going to be saved. You can't be saved judging others for their walk with me.
Yeah.
So this went on. It was a year. I hadn't made any changes. Everybody else in the church was changing, and my husband was fine with it. And my son, one reason I hadn't though is because my son said, Mother, I don't care if everybody in the church cuts their hair and does whatever. I just don't want you to.
Oh.
And so I didn't. All this, but it was eating me alive because I was watching everybody change and I was begrudging them and, and judging them for it. And I was a great judger because our religion had taught us to judge. If you didn't look like me,
that's right.
If your hair wasn't long, if you wore makeup or you had rings on or you didn't have your dress long enough.
Yeah. It was doctrine.
It was doctrine because some churches would even measure the length from the hem down.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's torture.
And my daughter talks about now. She says, I can remember when we had to cover our elbows. She said, because these are so attractive to men that it's going to make men
sexy,
fall.
they're going to make them fall.
But it's true. She did. She was raised that way.
Wow.
But one Friday morning, I just, I got where I was seeking the Lord for myself. I wasn't used to that because as long as I was listening to the church and I looked like the church, I was okay. I was going to go to heaven, Wow. And then I started realizing when my husband, the more he talked, the more he preached, he said, if you'll just listen to what I preach, just let me talk with you, just sit and communicate with me. And I would say, I will. But then I'd say, but you're still not going to change me.
Wow.
I see God's got to change me. I said, I'm not going to allow it. I'm old enough now. I've got to make decisions because God tells me to. And so that Friday morning, I woke up and it's just like that. Something happened.
Wow.
And the Lord spoke to me and said, today is D-Day. And so I just told Henry I'll be back later. And so I made an appointment at a hair salon. I went to a hair salon and I told the girl, my hair was, really long. The only time I cut my hair in all those years was when Henry was meeting the board, when my husband was meeting the board, and they'd got him because the women were trimming their hair. And I thought, oh my God, what if we're wrong? What if what he's doing is going to lead people astray? What if people are going to be lost because of what we're doing? Because we were the shepherds of that flock. And so that day, I went in the bathroom while he was gone meeting the board. And I flipped my hair around. And I pulled this much off and I just cut it off.
Wow.
And I said, now, God, if this is wrong, if I'm doing wrong, go ahead, kill me now. Strike me down now because I would rather be dead than to lead your children astray. And that's honestly what I told him that day. I just
So
stood
your
there.
heart was right.
I
Your heart
stood
was
there
right
and
to
nothing
receive it.
happened. Nothing. I didn't even tell anybody.
Wow.
I threw my hair back around. I put my hair right back up because you couldn't tell it was cut. It was so long.
Right.
I just wore it back in that little twist like we did.
You were sort of acting like Gideon a little bit. You want to cut and
Yeah.
see a little bit and see if it happened. If not,
I'm serious.
She wanted the signs.
yeah, I know.
But it didn't happen.
Mhm.
See, nothing happened. And I just thought, well, good Lord. And then I watched our families. They all were surviving and thriving. And they'd trimmed their hair. The women had trimmed their hair. The families had started wearing wedding bands, and their kids started wearing little jeans, and and I'm like, oh God, you know what? And so it was the neatest thing though. That day I went, and so the lady said, "What do you want to do?" My hair, of course, I wasn't graying, so it was okay. I said, "I want you to cut it right here, and I want it permed."
Oh wow!
I don't know what it was
You got
about
it
the
cut
perm.
and perm.
What about the perm? Because I didn't know what I was going to do with it.
Yeah.
When it got short, because I knew when it was long, I knew how to put it up and
Pin it
twist
up.
it up and whatever, and pin it up. But I didn't know what to do if it was hanging down. And so it was still long enough that when I got in the shower, I could toss my head and it still would have hair. But then I remember the day that one of my friends came over and I said, "Don't you trim my hair a little more?" And when she did it that day, I was taking a shower that night, and I tossed my hair to wash it, and it didn't toss.
Oh wow!
I cried.
Oh,
I cried
you
and
missed your
cried.
hair at that
I
point.
felt like I had lost something
Oh wow!
because it had been such
so
an
deep rooted
my
in you.
identity
Yes.
for all those years. But anyway, that day, after I looked in the mirror and I thought, God, is that really Ann? But then I got home, and of course Henry loved it. And so I said, the tell will be when Rob walks in this afternoon from school.
Mhm.
So my son and I was sitting at home waiting for him. It had been one of those horrible days of, oh God, what do I do? And so when he walked in that afternoon, he looked at me and he said, "Oh my God, Mom, you are beautiful."
Oh yeah.
He had never told me that.
Wow.
And see, it was not until years later that my kids finally became honest enough with me to laugh at me and say, "Mom, you were always the nurse. You were the band booster parent. You always were at school, always carrying us to school. And don't you know there was a reason why we would say, drop us at the corner?"
Oh wow.
And then Kim would say, because I had on skirts, and so if you dropped me at the corner before I got to school, I could have my skirt rolled all the way
Oh
up.
Lord, that's Kim.
You see, I'm telling you, it was such a journey, but that journey,
Yeah.
and then finding me, I found a place in God I'd never had, and I got the Holy Ghost when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
But I had never, ever had that type of relationship because at 12, I still depended on my parents to tell me what was right. And then I married a man who told me what I was supposed to do. And then when he said, "Oh, no, we're going to change totally," I'm like, no, I got to hear from God. And for the first time in my life, I started really listening to God. Isn't that
awesome.
crazy?
I know.
It was your journey, though.
It was crazy.
Your journey,
It was
though.
crazy.
And
But I'm telling you, in the process of our growing together, that's why the last 5 years I've been able to do what I did.
amen.
You know,
Amen.
I didn't, but I'll tell you this: I had no idea that I was as strong as I am.
Wow.
I had no idea that I had the power.
Because you always took the background.
Always was quiet.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't hear a lot about me. In fact, until we moved to Fayetteville, I would preach at our church in Jonesboro once a year, Mother's Day. I would teach the ladies. I ran the women's ministry, and I was in charge. I was over the music program totally because I have a degree in that. But so I was busy as I could be, and then I established. My husband wanted a Bible school, and so I was the one that was writing syllabus for the Bible school, and him and I were teaching, and then we had some of our pastors that would teach courses too. So I was so busy that it was okay I wasn't preaching. But when we arrived in Fayetteville, he said, I'm not I've not been doing this every week because we've been traveling to Indonesia and whatever. And he said, I have not been doing this like this for so long. He said, I'm not doing this by myself.
Wow.
He said, so every other week it's your turn.
Wow.
But I'd learned to do it in Indonesia because hi Jessica. So the first Sunday that we arrived in Indonesia in 1997, I was just, following him around like I would and just make him look good, you know.
Wow.
And that Sunday morning, we get up from in this pastor's house. They couldn't even speak English. We had to wait for the translator to come for us to communicate in the house where we were living. And so when we get there, the translator gets there and she says, okay, now here's your schedule. She said, so it was Sunday morning. She said, you have 5 services today.
Wow.
And she said, and Pastor Jones, your car will be here in 15 minutes with your translator. She said, I'm going to be your translator. I'm like, what? This is before I started preaching every Sunday.
Wow.
I'm like, what? And she said, oh, yeah. She said, you're going to be preaching in 5 different places. And she said, and I'm going to be translating for you today.
Wow.
So, I mean, God just sort of did this to me and threw me
Just
Right
showed
on,
you
right on the
about
skillet,
that.
didn't
Yeah. And,
But God was preparing you.
yeah, and
He
I
was
had
getting
word
ready.
in me because I taught in a Bible school. I wrote syllabus for Bible schools. I put the classes together. And I taught women for years. I mean, I could do it. I just didn't. But after that, I'm going to tell you, God set me up for Fayetteville.
Awesome.
Because then here, finally at the end, I was preaching more than my husband was. In fact, when he got diagnosed with dementia in 2015, I thought, it was February 2015, and he loved Indonesia out of the U.S., out of his family, God first, his family, and then our country. He loved Indonesia.
Wow.
And so I thought, you know what? Before it gets bad, and and I knew God could heal him, and we were walking on that, and we were expecting a miracle. We've always had miracles, but I just knew I wanted him to go back to Indonesia.
Wow.
So and what was neat was our scheduler called us within a few weeks. I mean, when I'm thinking about this in my mind, not talking to him, and then our friend in Indonesia that would schedule for us called and said, "Don't you think you guys should come back to Indonesia?"
Wow.
It had been a year.
Wow.
And I said, Harry, crazy thing. I said, the Lord's really been dealing with me. And then within 2 weeks, he's putting our schedule together, and we know within a month and a half we're going to be in Indonesia, and we're going to be there 6 weeks. And then 2 weeks later, I get a WhatsApp note from one of our friends in Indonesia, and she says, when you buy your airline tickets, let me know and give me your routing number. I'm depositing your airline ticket money into your bank account.
That's awesome.
Wow.
So before we
God.
even left, normally when we would go to Indonesia, we would buy it up front, our ministry would, and then the people would pay us, would
Gotcha.
reimburse us.
Yeah.
It was not a typical missions nation where you just go and give everything away.
Right.
Because we would do that too, but then people were handing us money. They would just, here, this is for you.
Wow.
And we would always recover our expenses.
Wow.
Always.
And that's a blessing.
And then
Look at
come back
God.
blessed. God always blessed us. But so we did so many things, and so I learned to do so many things, and I think it made me strong, and I didn't even know how strong I was.
Well, we see the strength right
Oh
now.
yes.
We
We
really, I mean,
definitely.
Yeah.
you
We-
are
Yeah.
very well doing what God asked you to do,
Oh yes.
and we're proud of you.
Oh yes.
We're very proud of
We
you, and
so
you
are.
continue the awesome job that you're doing. Y'all, this is Bone of My Bone, Marriage of the Heart. Please share the video.
Yes.
Please share it because this
Come on,
is
guys,
awesome.
share this.
Yeah, this is awesome. True testimonies that this young
Yes.
lady here is sharing with you all. So
Yes.
please share the video.
Yes.
Okay, so some of you guys, it's only saying Facebook user, and I hate that because I wish I could see your name.
No, I don't know
But one
why
of
it
you
does
says
that.
that I remind you of your mama. I love that
Aw.
so much.
Yes.
And then, I mean, here's what's weird. Traveling with Pastor Kim now with my daughter, and we'll go into these churches where the men or the pastor or the male pastor is maybe picking us up or at the airport or the hotel now and say, oh, hey, Pastor Kim, hey, Mimi.
Yeah.
These older guys are calling me Mimi too. I never dreamed this would happen, and I've been a Mimi for 26 years because my
Aw.
firstborn grandson started that. But now, in the past, this year, it's like the world is open up to me as Mimi. It's really crazy.
Yes.
But you know what? The process. If I look back now and it's almost like it was a bad dream. Do you get what I'm saying?
Wow.
Almost like a nightmare. I just woke up from a nightmare.
Wow.
Except I lost my husband in the nightmare. That's what dementia was like for me. I just, because I never, other than 40 years ago when my husband's dad passed with Alzheimer's, and we were, good Lord, 30, and we were busy building a church in Mississippi and just busy, busy. So he passes, and then we get back to life as usual. But so 40 years pass. And then when my husband is diagnosed, man, it was like, this just can't be. We didn't see it coming, it's what happened. He had a heart procedure in 2011. And something, I don't know, probably a year after that heart procedure, it was like I started realizing he wasn't, and he would say it, man, I don't know what's wrong with me. Because this man, I would ask him, honey, okay, death and life's in the power of the tongue. Where is it? And he would quote it. He would give me the scripture and quote it, but then, no weapon formed against me, baby, where is that? He would quote the whole scripture and then tell me where it was. I said, he was my walking concordance.
Yes.
And I was his walking dictionary because he couldn't spell.
Oh, wow.
But
So
I
that was a
couldn't
perfect
remember. Yeah,
combination.
I couldn't remember scripture and he couldn't spell. So we were perfect together.
Wow.
But he was like, he knew. I mean, his dad was 35 years old when he stumbled into a little old white country church one Wednesday night, and some guys were after him, and he was just trying to. It was safety's sake.
Got you.
And so he just falls down on the back pew and goes to sleep while the preacher's preaching.
Oh, Lord.
And then when the preacher's finished and there's a ruckus, because people are getting up and they're all moving to the altar, he gets up and he moves to the altar too.
Oh, wow.
And when they got him down to that altar, they would not let that man go until he got sober and received the Holy Ghost that night.
Wow. That's one of them Jacob's thing. I ain't going to let you go
Yeah.
until you're
They
blessed.
didn't let him
That's
go
awesome.
until he got blessed. But the results of that was he never went back to the alcohol. And they were moonshiners. It wasn't just alcohol, it was moonshine.
Wow.
They were from the hills of North Carolina, and man, I mean, in fact, his oldest brother, he was like, there was a Carolina Road. There was a movie years and years and years ago, and it was about carrying moonshine from state to state through the mountains. His brother did that.
Oh, wow.
His brother would haul moonshine, that's what they called it.
Wow.
And his dad even went to jail for shooting a revenue officer who came up on their steel. And the whole family declares that his dad was not the one that fired that shot, but he covered whoever did fire that shot.
Wow.
Oh,
And he
wow.
died in prison.
Oh, wow.
He died in prison, but they said he knew he was sick, and so he was just covering probably one of his boys or somebody. Who knows? Because they all were doing moonshine.
Now, PK said that she'll tell it. She'll tell everything.
That's true.
So you just keep talking.
Hey, and here's what's weird. I'm getting ready to release a book, and I just sent it to the editor yesterday. Yes, let's celebrate that.
Yes.
It's going to be called "Sleeping with a Stranger: The Life You Did Not Plan."
Wow, that
that's
sounds
so deep.
interesting. It
Yeah.
really does.
That is
And
so
so
deep.
that book, but as I'm doing it, I was thinking, oh my, because I brought back so many memories. So I've written in the past few months. But then yesterday I went back and I read the entire thing before I sent it to the editor.
Mhm.
And I'm like reading some of it about my kids and stuff I've got about my children. Both of my children are pastors.
Yeah.
But some of the things I wrote, and I'm like, oh my God. I haven't
Uh-oh.
told them.
Uh-oh.
I haven't told them I put it in my book. Now, Pastor Kim, she has already told the world. I mean, in her first book, we decided then there would be no skeletons. But my son hasn't written a book.
Uh-oh.
So with that one, I'm thinking, ooh, I may need to let him read this before I print this. But I'm telling you, it's the craziest thing because Mourn
I agree
and
with you, Chrissy.
when you talk about mourn and move, we got this because my husband had a in fact, he was doing really, really, really well for 4.5 years. And then last summer, a year ago, the neurologist gave him a medication that sent him, that honestly, it pushed him into the seventh stage of dementia. And he was probably in the fifth stage, but he still was workable. He was dressing himself, feeding himself, going to church with me. He would go shopping with me. He couldn't drive any longer, but we'd go walking. He could still ride his bike. But that medication, Depakote, I'm not exactly sure. The pharmacist thought maybe it was he was allergic to it. I don't know. But we didn't know anything was happening for 6 weeks. So from this was last of May into July. By the first week of July, and I knew something was wrong. My birthday was the second week. So my kids took me out for my birthday. And of course, my husband was with me. He went everywhere with me. And he was so horrible, so disruptive. It was like having a spoiled brat sitting in a booth with you. We couldn't even eat our food, so we ended up having our food box so we could bring it home. And I realized that would be the last restaurant we would take him into.
Wow.
See, there were a lot of last. There were times you never knew when, because he said a lot of I love yous. The last 10 months of his life, God, we said thousands of I love yous. There were times that Rob and Kim would sit beside him, and like I watched my son just sit by his daddy, and he would do this, and he would do this. He would just do to his daddy.
Yeah.
He would just kiss on his daddy like a little boy would, and my daughter would do the same. And she told me over and over. She said, "Dad was so busy. He was so busy in ministry when we were little that he didn't have time for us." And she said, so the last few months, the last year of his life, they were able to get back time. It's like he was our child, and he could not hold conversations like he did. In fact, this is so neat. One morning, my son was watching him so that I could go exercise. I'm an avid exercise person. And so Rob was sitting in the bedroom, and his dad was laying on the bed. And Rob was saying to himself, "Daddy, I just would give anything." Not talking to his dad because his dad really didn't understand. But he was just saying, "Dad, I would give anything if you could talk to me today. I need you now." He said, "I've got some things I need your wisdom." Because his dad was the mentor. His dad mentored, oh God, at one time we had 35 pastors, spiritual sons and daughters that looked to us as, I'm really fine. I'm really fine. And so he said, "Dad, I really wish you could just talk to me today." And then, he was just saying this to himself. And in a few minutes, this is how God did for us, how the journey was. In a few minutes, his dad turned over, opened his eyes, looked at him, and said, "It's not up to me. It's up to you.
Oh, wow.
It's up to you."
Wow.
And Rob, when I got home, Rob had been crying. And he said, "Mom," he told me what he'd done. But then he said, "Mother," what he was telling me was, because he has some really hard decisions to make. But he said, and what my dad was telling me was that whatever decision you make, it's going to be your decision. It's going to be okay. See, his dad didn't say that. His dad said, "It's your decision to make."
Yeah.
But the deal was his dad, and everybody, and here's what was weird. Even the caregivers that would come and sit with him, I had people from the church that would come and sit with him like 3 days a week, that would come for 2 hours and let me go get groceries and exercise and get groceries. And so they would always say when I got home, "Well, he did it." I'd say, "What did he do?" "He prophesied to me."
Oh, wow.
It's the craziest thing because he was a prophet and they called him a seer to the nations. And he could stand, he would flat-footed prophesy for 15 minutes to you.
Wow.
He would write a book almost of what was going to happen in your life, and it would come to pass.
Wow.
And so they said, even when he wasn't doing it to me, but he was doing it to others, he would just. And the thing they would say, "Oh my God, I needed that word today." That people would want to come in here and take care of him and watch over him, so they could see what he was going to say next.
Wow.
But I'm telling you, so see, when I say mourn and move, there. Listen, you see how I break down every now and then. I just do. I can't help it. And I would be worried about me if I didn't.
That's right. That's
true.
right.
But I still know my husband taught me to be strong. He taught me to keep moving. I watched him walk in the bank president's offices, and when the board would be at the church waiting because they just knew we were not going to get the money for the next phase that we needed to have done. And he would somehow, I don't know, he just had that charisma. He had that, whatever it was. The presidents would just take notice.
Yeah.
In fact, this is a strange thing. 2 years ago, I had a phone call, and it was from a former bank president in Mississippi. And he said, "I've been looking for you guys."
Oh, wow.
And he said, "I found you through Facebook." He said, "And then I met one of the members from your church where you pastored in Mississippi, and he gave me your phone number."
Wow.
And he said, so he had called several times, but I didn't know the number, so I didn't answer. And one day I finally answered, and he said, "Thank you for taking my call." He said, "I called because I wanted to say, you guys changed my life."
Wow.
Yes.
He said, he said, when your husband would say, "Give me his name, give me his word," that he was going to pay something when it would get done, it always got done.
Wow.
And this was a bank president that we have not been. We were there 40 years ago. We were there, really 46 years ago. And then we came here 40 years ago. So this guy, though, he said it changed his life. That was how Henry was. He just was such a strong man that how could I not be strong?
Yes.
He taught me that you just keep moving even when your world is shaken. In fact, I can remember during one season, during that 26 year when I said, "Man, we got so disconnected because of ministry and busyness and whatever." I was riding down the road one day and I said, "God, I'm gonna write a book." And I said, my title's going to be "One Day I'm on Top of the World, and the next day the world's on top of me."
Oh.
Thank God I didn't write that book.
Exactly.
Because I've been more on top of the world than the world's ever been on top of me.
Yes,
And look at the honor
yes.
that you guys got from the people that honor y'all, and also just being married to the love of your
I'm
life.
serious.
Like that to me just speaks volume. And the
serious.
way you talk about him, you just have this glow. So you know you guys were so in love, and you knew whatever he suggested to you to do or whatever, he did it from his heart, and it shows.
He was a leader, and I knew that, and I knew he was my pastor.
Yeah.
But at 52 years, this is the truth. We've been everywhere. We've been around the world so many times.
Wow.
But we've been, all over the United States. We the first 5-6 years of our lives, we'd been in 30 states, driving our travel trailer, doing evangelizing.
Wow.
But you know what? Not one time in 52 years have I ever met anybody else that I ought to ever think I'd like to be married to him.
Wow. And see, that speaks volumes.
Never.
It does.
That speaks
It does.
volumes because that's one of the things we teach on our show.
I think he was my soulmate.
He was.
Yes.
And I knew it. But see, I was going with somebody else before I met him. I went with a guy 3 years, the nicest guy. Really.
Oh, baloney. You ain't been with me. I can't see you being with nobody.
He was a really nice guy, and I met him in high school, and he was my high school sweetheart. And we've been engaged 2 or 3 times because we'd be engaged for months and months, and then we get mad at each other, and I give him his ring back. And so, but then we were doing okay. Then we would go through that season again, and it was during one of those seasons that I met Henry Jones.
Wow.
And I met him at a conference. My mother and dad I was old enough not to go with them anymore, and I had a job, and I took care of myself. I was very independent. And I did not that, and I went to a church in town because I was the piano player, and we had a group. I sang in a group, and so we traveled in music, and he was in the group with me, my former boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
But really nice guy, and his family. I mean, they loved me just like I was a daughter.
Yeah.
Because they only had two boys. But when I met Henry, we were in one of those dry seasons, and immediately, I mean, I met him, and then I remember he invited me to come to one of his revival meetings. And so I took two girlfriends with me. I wasn't going by myself. And so after church, he comes outside because he would never be alone with a girl.
Okay.
So he was, because of reputation.
Yeah.
And he was a
That
young
was
evangelist.
wise.
So he came outside, standing on the sidewalk in front of my car, and I was getting ready to leave. He said, "Why don't you come?" He said, "Saturday night, it's a statewide youth rally." He said, "And if you come," he said, "I will take you home." He said, "I'll have a carload of kids with me." He said, "But I would love to take you home." And I'm like, "But I'm going to go to my parents. They're 200 miles away." He said, "I will take you home."
Mm.
And because my parents were going to be there too, and they were going to drive back because they had to preach the next day. And so I said, "Well, I'll think about it." I wouldn't even give him an answer. I'll think about it. So all that, this was Thursday night. On Friday, all day Friday, I thought, God, what am I going to do? Oh, what am I going to do? Because I mean, I had been with this other guy for 3 years. But for some reason, and normally every Friday night, every Sunday, every Wednesday, every Friday, every Saturday, we went out.
Oh wow.
I mean, we knew 4 days a week we were going to be together, no
Yeah.
matter. The rest of the time, I was working. So, I mean, the other times I was doing stuff, had to get stuff done. But that Friday, I never got a call from him.
Wow.
And I knew we already were a little, we weren't doing well.
Yeah.
He didn't call me. And so my parents called me about lunchtime, and they said, maybe one or two. And they said, "Well, are you going to go with us? We'll pick you up." And then, because Henry says he wants to take you back to our home
Mm-hmm.
because they were down visiting. And I said, because I didn't live with my parents. And so I said, "You know what? Yeah, come on and pick me up."
Wow.
That was it. When I said
Wow.
that changed my life, because that
Yeah.
Saturday, it must have been on Saturday, because that Saturday night was the meeting, and then we had to be back to my dad's church the next day. And so that night, Henry gets me in the car, and there's a carload of kids,
Mm-hmm.
and so I ride with him back to Burlington, or to Greensboro, North Carolina, where my parents lived. And so it's 5 o'clock in the morning when we get there, or 4 o'clock in the morning, and my parents had just gotten in ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes to the door, knocks on the door, and he asks my dad, "Brother Kellum, is it okay if I sit out in the car with Ann for about 30 minutes? I really want to talk to her."
Wow.
My dad and mom loved him.
Oh wow.
See, they always thought he was supposed to be the one.
Oh.
But I didn't know him. We had just met in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
And I would say, when I would be having problems with Cecil, I couldn't even tell, or I shouldn't have said that. But when I was having problems with him, I couldn't even tell my mother, because she'd say, "Because you're not supposed to be with him." I said, "Mother, he's a great guy." She said, "It's not just about great guys,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about who does God want you to be with."
That's right.
And she would do that to me all the time, so I'd have to sit and cry alone if I was crying over something,
Yeah.
because I couldn't even tell her. So, so that night, of course, my dad said, "Absolutely." So that man sat in that car with me, and he proposed to me that night.
Oh wow.
That was the first time we'd been in
Did y'all hear
alone.
that?
Wow.
Did
Wow.
He proposed to me that night. Now here's the deal.
What did you say?
the
What
I
did you
kids,
said
say?
do the
yes.
kids know
Oh,
about this?
Yeah. I said yes, but here's the deal. I was like in shock, but by the time he got through, anybody would have said yes.
Oh Lord. He was
Because
a charmer.
oh
He was
God,
a
he
charmer.
charmed me. He told me he was taking me to the nations of the world.
Oh
I'd never been
wow.
anywhere. I'd been to Florida.
Wow.
I've been to Georgia and Florida. He said, "Ann, I'm taking you to the nations of the world." He said, "God's opening the doors for us. We're going to be around the world."
Wow.
And he went on and on about what was going to happen. But he said, "I'm lonely." He said, "I don't like traveling alone, and I want somebody that's got a
Wow.
heart for ministry." He said, "And God has already told me." He said, "I was in Florida 2 weeks ago." He said, "And God honestly dropped you into my spirit and said, "This
Wow.
is the one."
Wow.
And so
You
when
ain't
that,
waste no time.
52 years later.
well, hey, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But so help me, I said yes. But then I also told nobody except my parents.
Oh wow.
I told my parents, I said, but if you tell anybody, it didn't happen.
Oh wow.
And so they didn't tell anybody. Nobody, I didn't tell it because I thought this can't be for real. This has got to be a fairy tale.
So
this
how
can't
soon
be
did
real.
y'all get married?
Well, this was probably September.
Mm-hmm.
So in October, um, let's see, September, October. Well, I had moved. I was moving to my parents
Okay.
because he was only 20 miles from there. He wasn't really there. He was evangelizing, but when he came home, he would come home 20 miles from my parents. So I thought, you know what? Let's see what's going to happen. So I sat down with my boyfriend, my other boyfriend.
Okay.
And I
Y'all
just
getting
sort of,
exclusive
and
and I
tonight.
told him, I said, you know, we've had a struggle. I don't think it's supposed to be like this. And I said, and I'm not going to go into a marriage if this is the way it's going to be, that we're going to have dry seasons ever so often and can't live together and can't be around each other. So I said, I'm moving to my mom and dad's. Well, the day that I was moving, Henry called me and I was still at work, and that was my last day at work. He calls me. He is in town, and his deal is, I will drive back with you to Burlington. It's 200 miles where I was
wow.
going. And he did and helped me move my stuff. So it was like, and then this went on, and then we started writing. I have a bag full of love letters.
Oh, how sweet.
I received a letter a day, and he received a letter a day.
Wow.
That's
How
awesome.
Or airmail.
sweet. Yeah.
They were always airmail. And listen, and
Wow.
I quit my job, and I immediately got another temporary job in where my parents lived, so I had no problem working. But the whole deal was every letter is filled with, I can't wait until we're together. I know that this is God's plan for our. I mean, everything was about. So I
Wow.
mean, it was like, it's
What
gonna
do I
happen.
say?
And then in October he was coming home because I never saw him, but maybe once every 3 or 4 weeks.
Got you.
So the letters is how we got to know each other.
Yeah.
And so so he was going to do a revival at his dad's church in October. So he knew. Oh man, it was like, this can't be really happening. I just think this is I don't believe this.
I'm
This is
just
a
smiling,
dream.
y'all, because I love this stuff.
This is a dream.
know.
So he comes to pick me up, and I hear he's telling me that 5 girls from the youth camp that he had been counselor and all this stuff, they were driving 100 miles to come to his service because all of them wanted to be Mrs. Henry Jones.
Oh wow.
Okay.
Okay, so he told you that, huh?
He didn't tell me that. My mother told
Oh,
me that.
okay, got you.
Your
wouldn't-
mother was doing some
Yeah,
some
he wouldn't tell
investigation.
me that. But when so he said he came to pick me up to take me to church. And so we go a little early, and he pulls in to downtown in Burlington in front of a jewelry store.
Oh wow.
And so he thinks the store's closed. And what he's trying to do is he's still trying to hold on to me
Yeah.
because I'm like, this can't be real. I mean, I've had such a solid relationship with this other guy. This just can't be. This is like, man, I'm just grasping, trying to hang on for dear life, and I don't know that I can do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Sweeping you off your feet.
that's what he
basically.
did. So the jewelry store, he thought it was closed. And so he says, I want you to look at something. He was still just pulling me in, but he
Yeah.
wasn't going to really do it. And I found that out later.
Oh.
So we go and we look in the window, and a man comes and unlocks the door
Oh,
and says, "Oh, so
wow.
you're back. We'll bring her
Wow.
on in and let her pick out the ring she wants."
Oh wow. He got set up. He didn't even
Oh,
know
he
it.
got set up and didn't know it.
He got plugged. He got
And
plugged in, didn't
hey, before he walked out of that store, we had a ring in a box going home with us.
Wow.
He didn't give it to me. So that night was Saturday night, and all these girls had come to hear him preach, and wanted to see him. Am I bothering this table?
No ma'am.
Oh, okay.
No ma'am. You keep right ahead.
So that night, he preaches just as normal, and I'm just sitting up there, and thinking, "Oh my God, this is I've never had to deal with all this." Because I mean, I usually was the head honcho where I was,
Yeah.
I didn't have to worry about all this. And now I've got this guy. I mean, is this the way it's going to always be? But then after church, his mother had all these cakes, and she was a great cook. So they knew that these friends were coming in. So everybody was invited back to their house. So we're all sitting in the kitchen, and we're all eating the best homemade cakes ever in the world. When Henry just leaves the room, and all these girls were there before they drove back that night. And so Henry walks back in. He gets on his knee in front of all those girls.
He just cut the cord from all of them. Just
And he said,
"This is the one. I found her."
And he asked me to marry him in front of all those girls. And I thought, he's for real.
He's
This
for
is
real.
for real now.
She was off her feet then.
But this was still so young, early, because I mean, then I told him, we started talking about then marriage. And I'm like, it's just not going to happen till July, August next year. This was like November by then, October, November. And so from then on, every letter I would get, it would be, I think we need to move it up. It needs to be moved up. Let's move it up to June. Let's move it up to May. Let's move it up to April. And then he got March 10th. And I said, it's not going up. I can't do it. My mother, because at Christmas that year, my mother had an accident, a really bad accident, a one-car accident. And she broke her whole right side. Everything was broken. And so she had several surgeries coming, but she was in a wheelchair. And so I knew she wouldn't be able to help me do anything. And I didn't expect her to. But I could, my deal was, how in God's name can I marry this man and him put my clothes in his car and me be gone? How's my family going to make it? Because now my mother's down. My mother's not able to do it. But my mom and my dad would not stop. They were like, Ann, this is your life. This is your chance. You are marrying Henry. Because they would have died if I hadn't married him. But you know what's the weird thing about it? 52 years together. And honestly, my mom and dad loved him every minute of the time they were here on earth. In fact, if he did wrong, they still loved him. If he did wrong, they still thought he was okay, good.
Wow.
And my mother would tell us, because she lived longer than my dad, and they lived with me. My dad lived with us 9 years. My mother 15, because of Henry.
Oh wow.
He said we have to move them in. They're not able to take care of them. I mean, he was the son.
Got you.
And so because of that, my mother would tell the rest of the kids, he's my favorite child. She always said that. But he said because his dad and mom, in fact, his dad died 40 years before. His mother died the next year.
Oh, wow.
And died of a heart attack at 58.
Oh, wow.
But because they were so, we were so young in our 30s, when he married into my family, oh my God, he took my parents as his parents.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Okay, let's speed right along here. Now
Yeah.
I know everything from the beginning of being sort of like in bondage, basically, the way you dressed and all that, to the point that you decide that you're gonna move on and be who you are. And to this point right now of losing him. Tell the audience how to move on, in your opinion, how to move on.
The night he died, my daughter and I, my son, before he left, and they took his body out, my son said, Mom, is there anything we can do for you before we leave? And I said, yeah, just get the hospital bed out of my room. Because he died next to my bed, in his bed. And I said, just get the hospital bed out. So they did. They moved it out. And Pastor Kim stayed with me that night. We lay down on that bed, and we slept fantastic. Wow. Just slept so beautiful. We prayed before we went to sleep and said, God, just, we thank you. Because him passing, it was such a beautiful thing. It was such a spiritual thing. Such a transfer took place that night. And because of that, it gave us such peace. And to know that there was in fact, I told my kids later, we were just singing, how can I say thanks for all the things you have done for me, his favorite song. And then to God be the glory. And so we were singing this with our hands up, to God be the glory. And we knew that he was leaving us. And then I just bent down to him and I said, baby, this is the greatest honor of my life was serving you for 52 years.
Wow.
I got to tell him
Precious.
everything I wanted to tell him.
Yeah.
And through the last few months, thank God, you know, as bad as dementia is, it was a progressive thing. So we were able to just love on him and give him what we wanted. But because of that, Kim and I woke up the next morning and we just got up and started living life. And it was the neatest thing because even going to the funeral home, because we're the first ones in our family to do this, but we chose to cremate because my husband and I had talked about it the last few years, and my kids have talked about it too because we just felt like that's what we wanted to do, and so we knew he would not be embalmed. So they took him to, we told them that. They knew it, the funeral home, when they picked him up. So the next day we went in to do everything we had to tell them what we wanted and all that and pay. And they said, and they said, would you like to see him again? And I said, yeah, of course, we were going to ask. So yes. And they had him in a room and had him laying on a bed. And the same sheets that came off his hospital bed, he still was laying on them and had it pulled over him. And he had his same little pajamas on because we always dressed him great, dressed him nice. And he was absolutely beautiful. Had not been embalmed. It was like he died the night before, and it was like 4 o'clock that afternoon.
Wow.
He was just beautiful and so pretty, so peaceful that we just loved on him. Just loved on him and told him how much we loved him. And even he wasn't there, but that body we'd never see again.
Right.
And so help me, when we left there, honestly, I have a peace because even we did a memorial service on Saturday, which was great, but we chose to have a private burial on Sunday, Father's Day.
Oh, wow.
So after church on Sunday, Pastor Kim preached, and after church on Sunday, 2 o'clock, they opened up the cemetery for us. And they had put up a tent and had probably 10 chairs or 12 chairs out. And they had the hole for us because we were going to bury the urn. We wanted a place to be able to go.
Right.
And we didn't want to scatter. We wanted it, a place to go. And so that's what we did. It was just our family and very close friends and our spiritual son from North Carolina that was a pastor, Pastor Ron.
Yeah.
Him and his wife, and just us. And so it was the neatest thing because we already had the urn, and my son, he takes the urn out himself from the car and carries it down to the tent, to the table. And then Morgan is carrying the vault. And then when we get there, they set the vault down. We have to sit the urn in it, lock it, and do everything ourselves. Even though there is a representative from the gardens there.
Right.
And then they had one service guy that was waiting with a little tractor, like a yard tractor, and
to
yeah,
bury it.
yeah, with just a little trailer with some dirt on it and 4 shovels. So when we sing, and we just talked about him and just thank God for his memory and for giving us the legacy. Because I looked around at that tent at the legacy that Henry Jones left.
Wow.
And so then they Morgan they put the urn in, and Morgan set it down in the hole. And then the guy pulled the trailer over, and he let each one of us get a shovel. And we all did the shoveling. We did the shoveling and put the flowers on the ground. It did it all. And I just, it was everything we did was we were so at rest, at peace. It was like everything we did, we were giving honor to the great man who left so much here. So, you know what I do? I will mourn every now and then. Like yesterday, I cried some when I was reading my book, just memories. And then once in a while, when I start talking like this, I may cry, but I may not cry
Yeah.
again for days and days and days
Yeah.
because I know I mean, God's opened the world to me. I'm moving.
Mhm. Oh yes.
I will not allow anything to keep me locked down. I'm not stuck. I will never be
That's
stuck.
awesome. That's
Amen.
I will
awesome.
never be stuck. And I talk to people. Listen to this. I do a blog, and my blog, I started it when my husband was alive, and I would just talk about the frustrations of dementia or whatever, but I would always do it from a faith point of view because he taught me. That's why he never owned dementia, not one time, because I would
Wow.
never, if diabetes was diagnosed in me, I would never call it mine.
No.
Exactly.
And
So
that's
we
what.
never called
Mhm.
dementia ours.
That's it.
Never.
It wasn't yours.
We don't. It was an
It was a
unwelcome
diagnosis.
intruder in his brain.
Yes. Yes.
So because of that,
Amen.
he taught me to be a faith walker. And so I'm a water walker. I
Yeah.
flat.
Yes.
You know what? And I'm not walking because I don't know believe that that's Jesus out there. Peter was really, that was the deal. Is that really you, Lord? Then
Yeah.
let me.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I don't know how much faith that was because he
No.
said, "Oh, you have little faith."
Yeah,
Yeah. Yes.
exactly.
But I thank God I do. I am a faith walker.
Yes, you
Yes.
are.
And I know I'm powerful.
Yes, you
Yes.
are.
And
It's
you are.
crazy.
And no.
Yes.
That's okay. That's
That's
okay because
yes.
as fresh eyes upon you now,
Mhm.
my wife and I,
Mhm.
we see the
Yes.
anointing on your life, the
Yes.
oil flowing from you.
Yes.
We can say that with him passing, he passed you the mantle,
Amen.
Mhm.
and you
Yeah.
are walking in this,
Mhm.
and you're unafraid to do
That's it.
so,
And
and that's
really,
the great thing.
I'm going to say a lot because I'm going to preach on Legacy Sunday. So there's a lot I could say tonight I don't want to say
Yeah,
That's
that's
okay.
because I'm
Don't
going to preach
right.
it.
yes,
That's
ma'am.
right.
Yes,
That's right. I
ma'am.
But
understand.
I promise you to watch even my daughter be who she is now. In fact, the Sunday after my husband passed, because PK was there, she heard me. I prophesied 2 days before he died there would be a transfer. There'd be a transfer. The Lord spoke to me and said,
Wow.
"There's a transfer of anointings and giftings getting ready to take place."
Yes.
So I knew it. So the nurse would keep telling us, leave the room for a bit because they're not going to die with their families hovering over them because they don't want to leave you,
Mhm.
and it's their choice to leave.
Right.
And so we would walk out, then we'd be right back in
Right
there
back
because
in
I
there.
was not going to stay away.
Exactly.
That my kids were not going to stay away. That's
Yeah.
their daddy, and that
Yes.
was my
Exactly.
Yes.
honey.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so we would go right back in there. But also God showed me Elijah and Elisha,
Wow.
and so because of that, I meant. You know what? I was going to be there when he died. And I'm so thankful because we could have been asleep and he could have been in the bed right there
Hmm.
beside my bed.
God knew
And
you
I
needed
would have
that.
missed it
Yeah.
Yes.
because
God
he was
knew.
so quiet when he was passing.
Yeah.
And you know what? God did it for
He
us.
did.
Yes.
He
And so I
did.
think God set me up, set my children up, set our
Mhm.
grandkids up because even our grandsons, one of my grandsons said to me one day at lunch, it's really neat because now one of my grandsons, I was at lunch with him yesterday. We can talk for 2 or 3 hours. But he said to me one day, he said, Mimi, he said, almost got disconnected from God. He said, because of this thing with Papa. He
Wow.
said, I got where I got mad. I was getting mad at God that a man as powerful as Papa that had done so much good for the world
Mhm.
that this would be taking him out.
Yeah.
And so then he said, but then I went to a retreat. He said, and at the retreat, he said, what the pastor was preaching was exactly what I needed to hear. And he said, and that night I heard the voice of God, and God spoke to me and said, your papa's spirit is already with me. It's only his body that's broken.
Wow. That's awesome.
See,
Coming
he
from a
needed to hear
grandson.
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm watching even my grandson Morgan that lives with me because man, he was every day. He would work all night, and then during the day, when I would call upstairs and say, "Baby, I need you. Can you come and help me change Papa?" And he would get. Never one time did he ever say no, ma'am.
Wow.
He would come, yes, ma'am, in a minute. He would be right there, and he always helped me. But because of that, it really hit him hard.
Yeah.
You know, when his mama, because
Of
he said,
course.
I
He got
just didn't
close. He
see
bonded
this
with him.
coming.
Right,
Yeah.
because he see the strength in him so much. He saw so
That's
much
it.
strength and leadership in him.
And then
that
and him and his brother even said, you know, he was our dad when we didn't have a dad.
that's
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's
But you know
awesome.
what? That's why the strength that I have, it's knowing that it took my daughter 36 years to find her place. Well, it was longer than that. It was 3 more years of journey. But so you know what? I'm not. My grandsons are 18 to 26. I know God's doing something in them.
Oh yeah.
Amen.
Oh, yes.
It may not happen in the next 6 months or a year, but it's going to happen. But you
Amen.
see what I'm doing? I'm moving.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
still moving. I'm still. In fact, I mean, it's just been the neatest thing. Even meeting people that I haven't seen in a while, and they know my husband passed, and they know how we were always together, and they will immediately say, "Oh, we're so sorry. We're so sorry." And I guess they expect me to fall apart, and instead, baby, it's going to be okay.
I hear you.
Exactly.
And,
See what I'm
That's your
saying?
heart.
yes, and I
Yes,
believe
that's
it.
your
That's
I believe
heart.
it because we
because
see it.
yeah,
We see it. We
Mhm.
see it, Mimi. We
yeah.
see it. We see it
Yes.
all over you. Your
It's
daughter.
the neatest thing. Yeah,
Yes.
watching her. I mean, something. Have you not noticed
Oh,
that there's something happened? There's it's like a double portion anointing.
Oh
yes,
yes. Oh,
yes.
every
I mean,
Sunday it's just
everything.
growing.
Yes,
Every
yes,
Sunday and then the Wednesday
absolutely.
nights it's just
And
yes.
Yes.
I'm traveling with her, watching her
Yes.
transform congregations.
Mhm.
We were in a Spanish church 2 weeks ago on a Sunday, and the third service was at 5 o'clock, and it was full of Hispanics, and the pastors I mean, they've got great churches, and so this. I looked around because my daughter's just preaching. And while she's preaching, I look around. There's a man sitting on the second row over here, tattoos everywhere on his face, everywhere down his neck, and he is crying so hard
Mm.
that he had to reach up to the front row to get tissue.
Wow.
And then he's just wiping, just
Wow.
doing this to his face
It's
because.
that. It's
An
the anointing.
anointing.
It's the anointing on her life
Mhm.
now.
And she's told me that night, I told her about it. She said, Mama, she said, I looked around that congregation and she said, men were crying all over that place.
Yes.
Because the ministry started out it was like ministering to women.
Wow.
But all of a sudden now she has got so many. I'm watching the men.
Yes. Oh yes.
And
Men.
that's
Yes.
and I talk about that all the time with
Yes.
my wife that I'm
Yes.
I'm ready to see a move of the men's
Mhm.
come to the altar because now
Mhm.
when we go to places and the altar call, we see a lot of women come, which is
Mhm.
fine and great and awesome and I love it. But I'm ready to see the men's
I
move
know it.
and
Mhm.
come now, regardless of your background, where you've
Yeah.
been, whatever clique you was in
Yeah.
or whatever, come now because and God is using whether it's female or male, God is
Absolutely.
using you
Yes.
to really just
Transform lives.
yes
Transform life.
unadulterated type. I mean, just
Yes.
people coming,
Yeah.
people coming.
Amen. Well, you guys, we hate to call it a close
Is it
tonight.
been an
Yeah, oh,
hour?
Oh,
it's
it's
been an hour and 15 minutes.
okay. We
Sorry,
That's
guys.
if
all
you want to seed
right.
into
God
bone
bless.
of my bone, we will put up the apps and everything you need to go to seed into bone of my bone, marriage of the heart.
Amen.
Um, to be able to do this, to travel and to see, to get testimonies like this, I tell you,
Yes.
this is awesome. This
We are honored. We are
yes,
so honored that
yes,
Mimi would take the time
time,
to just
yes,
spend and just pour
Amen.
into us. Let us just lay at her feet and get the
yes,
wisdom
This
that
is
yes.
an
she's
honor
given
for me.
out.
No,
We
it's
are
This
an
is an
honor for
so
honor for
thankful
me.
us.
because she's that mother that a
Yeah,
lot of us didn't have or didn't grow up with our mothers or whatever the case may be. She's that mother to nations for real, for real. And she
yes,
love us like we didn't know Mimi no time before. She was just loving on us like we've known each other
yes,
all of our life.
yes,
So I
yes.
appreciate it.
We
I
love
appreciate the
Mimi and
love you
I love you
show.
guys too.
You and Pastor Kim are just a bundle of
amazing,
love.
And thank you
Yes.
guys for hanging in here with us.
Yes, yes,
yes.
yes.
And so, like I said,
Share
we
the
don't
video.
want to bring it to a close, but it's about that time, you guys. So, thank you for tuning in tonight with us as we talked about Mourn and Move.
Yes.
And oh my God, Mimi just poured her heart
Share the
out in her
video.
testimonies and just showed us just how the process is when you find the love of your life, or the love of the
Amen.
life finds you.
Yes,
Amen.
I
That's the
found
truth.
mine
Yes,
too.
finds you.
Oh, I do want to say this.
Go
We
ahead.
glean from you.
Oh
We
yes,
glean from
definitely.
you. I wanna get to that plateau, being with her 52
I know
years.
it.
I want
Yes.
that. And that's what I long for.
Go
You
back
know,
and
and I
catch the replay. If you caught the last few moments, go back and catch the replays. You want every detail of this. It was so
yes,
awesome.
Hey,
yes.
Melinda. And
Yes.
Rochelle, thank you.
Yes, yes. So
Love
thank
you,
you
Amanda.
all. Yes. Oh, my friend on there.
Hey,
Hey,
Tamia.
Tamia.
She lived
This
in
our
yeah.
Mimi.
Yes.
Ah,
That's our friends that moved way to
To
Washington from
stay.
Georgia.
Yes.
Yes, but thank you all for tuning in on tonight. Share the video.
Yes.
Even when we get off, you can share it. Please catch the replay if you didn't see it all, because you don't want to miss a moment of
No,
this.
no.
We love you guys, and you have been tuned into
To
Bone
bone
of
of
My
my
Bone,
bone,
Marriage
marriage
of
of
the
the
Heart.
heart.
We love you guys. Good
Salute you
night.
love
all. We
you.
love
Love
you.
you, love you, love you.